Here we go. Hello, dear guests. Hello, dear followers. Hello, dear Mark Twainers. Hello, dear world. Hello, dear internet. Today, it's my honor to have on our fourth episode Alexandra Anton as a guest. And I couldn't be happier to have you as a guest, Alexandra. Welcome to Alumni Spotlight by Mark Twain International School. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. This is super exciting and a little bit nerve-wracking, but yeah, I guess it's because of all the memories.
I'm more than sure that you will be as amazing as you have been during the years that I got to work with you, get to sing with you, get to perform on the stage with you during our Mark Twain International School years. Just to make like a brief introduction, Alexandra is part of the class of 2013. She graduated the Faculty of Law at King's College in London and is currently working at Fresh Minds as a senior client consultant. Very professional. I mean, for me, I say it's obviously, I was sure everything was going to be professional, but I got to know Alexandra as this super creative person that would attend the same dancing classes as I would during the optional courses at Mark Twain. And Alexandra was so talented that I remember that at one point I was dancing with my partner Mia, which I hope she's following and I'm saying hello. And we were dancing and Alexandra was behind us and she was like, yeah, I'm just gonna draw you guys for a second. And it took like 3 seconds and she started sketching us and it looked very realistic. And I was like, Alexandra, why are you keeping those talents so hidden? I mean, it wasn't hidden, but yeah, I know I just introduced her as a law student, but I can't help myself. Alexandra's amazingly talented at arts too, so I just couldn't put this out there. But I think we will dig into more details about all of these parts of your creative yet super professional law side of Alexandra that I didn't get to know during our Mark Twain years. When did you join the Mark Twain family, Alexandra?
First grade. I can't remember the year. I think yeah, just the year 2000. So straight out of kindergarten. I think it was just was it the second year that the school had been open, or just I think
I, I
very early
obviously,
days. It was super early days of Mark Twain because obviously you were there from day one. And I
actually,
remember,
I joined in fifth grade, so I think you were a first or second grader.
yeah, so I was 3 years below you, but I think the reason why I kind of
Yeah, yeah,
remember you as being there from day one is because obviously your class was kind of the OG
class
class.
zero.
So, yeah, that kind of stuck with me. But I joined super early on, and I remember I had just moved really close to the school with my parents, and they were super focused on getting me to attend a school with a bilingual program, and there weren't very many at the time. And yeah, it just so happened that we'd moved nearby, and I think at the time, little did we know it would stick for that long. Yeah, I think I certainly wasn't expecting to spend my entire school life in one place, but yeah, it's been awesome. Don't regret it one bit.
Just casually 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, first of all, I can't not notice your accent has changed, and it's I mean it's very fancy,
Yeah.
and I mean it's really funny because a lot of times when you hear the British accent here in Romania, it's people. I mean, at Mark Twain, obviously we didn't get that part of like it was native speaking towards the U.S. English. And most of the time, when you would hear someone with a British accent, it would be from like public school. And sometimes it doesn't sound quite British, but yours is just on point, Alexandra. And it's weird. I keep on calling you Alexandra when I'm used to calling you. It's just I wrote here Alexandra Anton, but Alexandra Anton has
So
always
formal.
been Alexa for us. So we'll just stick to Alexa.
Yeah, I think it makes it sound even more professional and more corporate than it actually is. So just yeah, just
Alexa, yeah.
stick with the casual one. But yeah, on the accent bit, I'm very flattered that you think so, because I agree with you. And we left Mark Twain with a very American accent, and now I don't really know what mine is, because it's still got the old sort of American accent
Yeah,
hints,
but
but
I mean, obviously, so many years in London have marked you, at least from the accent point of view.
yes, profoundly.
Okay, so format-wise, I'm gonna just present a few questions. Some of them are gonna be lighter to digest, and some of them are gonna be slightly more complex for you to dig in and give us the best version of the answer that you can think of. Everything that we do on this show is for the future generations, for the actual generations, and people who kids who want to, for example, think of joining a university in London, for example. We're gonna go through like the experiences and how it was, how from all points of view. And you're free to ask anything at any point. So if there's anything that comes on your mind, please feel free to do so. So let's start with some light questions, lighter stuff. What do you miss most about school? I mean, I couldn't just not ask this one. It's too good to be ignored.
Yeah. Well, I guess immediately after leaving, the thing that sort of struck me the most is I've never, maybe not up until working, but I've never really been in a position where I got to spend so much focused time with a group of people. And I guess
Mhm.
form those types of bonds, because university, and I assume we might get to it in a couple questions time, but university in London especially can be a maybe a slightly fragmented experience, as opposed to going to a campus university where everything it kind of you still have that close-knit feeling, and you build those relationships and you build that sort of friend group. Whereas if you're just thrown in the middle of a really big city, it's a slightly different experience, and your sort of friend groups fluctuate more. There isn't a pattern in terms of how you go about daily life. There's just a lot more variety, which can be a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed that. But I've really missed the community feel, I guess,
Mhm.
and I sort of get it to an extent at work. Definitely got it a lot more before the pandemic, when I actually got to see my colleagues. But I do miss that a lot. And obviously, in my case, it's a little bit different, because I spent out of sort of 12 years of being at Mark Twain, the majority of those 12 years were with the same group of people. And yeah, we sort of had people dropping in and out, and changing schools on certain occasions, but the core group stuck for 12 years. So it was a shock to the system to sort of get away from that and suddenly be like, okay, I sort of need to find my way now and adapt, and I guess just sort of um yeah, not have that community set up anymore. So I think that would be it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean it's something that I think most of the alumni that I had on this show, where everybody was talking about that family environment, that coziness that you felt when you were going to school. And literally, I think a lot of people emphasize the fact that going to school wasn't only about going to school. It was like a reunion with your like your second family. So I totally get your feeling, and I think everyone watching that's a Mark Twain International School alumni can totally relate with what you just said. So yeah, we feel you, Alexa, and I think everybody's just super welcome back at school whenever they're in the country, and obviously whenever the pandemic doesn't force us to to just, I don't know, socially distance.
Not interact.
Yeah. Okay. The second question I was thinking of would be something like, it's about your IB years. And it would be, name that one moment or one of those magical moments that marked you the most during your IB years. Like, what was that one thing you can think of when you think of your IB experience?
This is gonna sound so lame, but my extended essay was a big sort of turning point for me, because I guess it was sort of the moment where I think, partly because of the teacher that was supporting me to sort of complete it, it was the moment where I sort of thought, okay, this is when you make the transition from normal school, where it's maybe, well, the traditional schooling system, so just
Mm-hmm.
moving completely away from IB. I guess there's always been more of an emphasis on sort of memorizing stuff, and just kind of not necessarily thinking very deeply about the ideas that you're interacting with. So the extended essay was sort of the point for me where I had to kind of take a bit of a step back and just think, okay, in order to do the best that I can in this, I need to really tackle some big ideas and think a little bit more broadly about things, and really just I have to do more than I have until now, and actually go out there and do proper research and consult all these different sources and get various different points of view, so that I can form my own perspective and actually have some kind of independent thought in that piece
Mm-hmm.
of work. I guess that is something really valuable that I think most people who do the IB can sort of take away from the program, that it teaches you to think independently, which I think afterwards it was probably the most useful skill for me in university and work now, and just, I guess, having the ability to think critically as well, about the things that you're interacting with. So yeah, that marks me also because it was pretty intense and quite a stressful piece of work. So I don't know how much of it is me reflecting fondly on it and how much is just PTSD. But
I can
um,
totally relate.
yeah, I
Okay, now
think
you made me
as
curious. What was your subject for your extended essay? Because I had to ask. Like,
yeah, so it was a book. I've got it behind me actually. It's a book by a Romanian author called Mircea Cărtărescu.
mm-hmm,
And the book is called Blinding, and it's basically a sort of stream of consciousness type of thing. It's very unstructured. There's a lot of symbolism in it. If I were to read it again now, I think I'd sort of look back at everything that I wrote in the extended essay and want to burn it, basically, because I'm sure it will sound like nonsense. And I don't think I'd have a full grasp on the book even now. But it was an interesting piece of work. And like I said, the teacher that I had pushed me to just get out of my comfort zone. And I think it was less about, oh, this needs to be super intellectual and, super,
mm-hmm.
super academic. It was more just, this is a complicated thing. Why don't you have a go at unpacking it and see what sort of ideas you come up with? So yeah, it was interesting because it was so broad. Um,
Yeah, I can. I mean, so you chose Romanian literature for your extended
yeah,
essay. Yeah, I mean, I totally understand you. I went for visual arts, and it was always something I was really excited about. But once I tried to actually, once I realized what I'm getting into and what I'm trying to answer, and it was pretty intimidating, but I think it was, as you mentioned, one of those great exercises that you get to do as a high schooler, because I feel like once you get to university, there's a lot of those things happening over and over again. So having that exercise during your high school years is definitely, it's a big push that you get. And yeah,
it's
I
like
totally understand.
it's like a baptism of fire. Because if you do it at such a young age, you feel so much more comfortable with anything that comes at you in university. And granted, that stuff isn't easy either. But I guess you just sort of, yeah, you're a little bit less stressed tackling it
Yeah,
all.
no shockers. Pretty much. Uh, okay, so now that we mentioned your high school period, and then we mentioned the International Baccalaureate, obviously the next question there that we're gonna head towards is your student life. And I think besides like what's it to be a student there at King's College, the question is what's the full experience? Like how is it to be a student in London at King's College? Like if there are like students that are watching us, and I'm pretty sure it's really hard to not have at least one person that's considering King's College as an option. So how would you describe your experience?
I think I did 80% of my growing up in university, because generally speaking, especially because of the setup and everything, I am completely comfortable saying my childhood was fairly sheltered, and I guess a lot of time was spent sort of purely heads down in academics and whatnot. So I think it was a big shift to suddenly just sort of wake up completely by myself in the middle of this huge city and have to deal with university and living alone and everything. So it was a lot, but rather than being anxious about it, I was just really excited about everything. So in my first year, something that I hadn't realized prior to going to university, I hadn't realized it was going to be such an important thing, but just continuing to do the same thing that we did at Mark Twain, which is just throwing yourself into other activities as well.
Mm-hmm.
That is essentially how you get the most out of university, particularly if you're going abroad. Is very hard to, I guess, get a full sense of the culture of the place, properly kind of form friendships with different types of people, different sort of groups, and try out various different activities. It's very hard to do that if you don't partake in activities beyond just sort of seminars, lectures, and so on. So it was a similar system whereby you have student societies, and you can sort of take part in sports, or like for example for law students, again it's pretty nerdy, you can take part in this thing called mooting, which is basically it's mock trials,
Okay.
which I guess even if you don't want to go into that career direction, I think is just quite fun because it gives you a healthy dose of adrenaline, and you get to call someone your honor, and you get to say stuff like "I object," even though it's technically not right, um, according to mooting rules. So you can still do it. But I think that was sort of a really big thing for me, just taking part in all of those things in order to just get the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess at the end of it, I just wanted to sort of be able to say, this is what the experience was like. These were the highlights for me. Yes, the course was amazing, but also I developed from this, and this points of view. And I feel a lot more well-rounded. And I guess I felt much more comfortable with myself at the end of
Mm-hmm.
university. I feel like doing most of my growing up in those 3 years, I just sort of, yeah, got to understand who I am as a person a lot more in that process. Sorry, that got philosophical super
No,
quickly, but
I
I hope
mean
that
it
kind of
makes so much sense, and what you were saying about getting to experience the university years also outside of the university, and you mentioned about joining clubs and extra activities that you may do, and obviously volunteering, and that's something that I have been doing a lot, and I think I'm still doing that, even though time is not that much on my side of
helps.
the situation for the moment, but it's something I think that I've constantly said. I mean, staying in Romania for my university years, obviously I got to Mark Twain with every single chance to get to know the kids, to be there at the beginning of the academic year, and so on and so forth. And I've always mentioned how important it is to do volunteering. And I think that's something also that got to stick to us during our IB years with the CAS part of the IB, creativity, activity, and service, which is
Yeah.
something that I think at one point during my IB years, we had so many CAS hours that one of our coordinators were like, I'm gonna have to cut some of these off because people are gonna think you never got to study. I'm like, yeah, I know. Sometimes I wonder how we got to do all those things in that short amount of time. So I
But
can totally relate.
I think it's important to just sort of acknowledge that a real adult, let's say, does a bunch of different things on a day-to-day basis. You don't just sort of, you aren't just heads down in work all the time. You can't exactly schedule your priorities so that you're only dealing with just one thing at once. So I
Mhm.
guess when it's so deeply ingrained in you from your high school years through these programs, and even before that, because I suppose even prior to IB, there's always been a very strong emphasis on exploring your interests beyond
Mhm.
just academics, and I guess just finding what you're good at, finding what you're talented at, just trying out a few different things, I guess, because that can be fun as well. But it's important to just be as well rounded as you can possibly be, and I guess to be aware of all the different areas in which you can add value, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, as opposed to just
Mhm.
sort of operating in a purely self-interested way where sort of go to a good university, you get your degree, you get a high paying job, and everything you're doing is purely driven by you wanting to increase your
Mhm.
income. Whereas there are many other ways that you can develop yourself and add value around you as well, which I think you can only really do if you're exploring things
Yeah.
beyond just sort of the core day to day. So yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page with
Yeah, I
that.
think we were extremely lucky. I think I got to mention this almost on every single episode. It's the optional courses that Mark Twain offers. I think that if those courses weren't there by default in the entire system of Mark Twain International School, I think because of the fact that the school wasn't, well, for you it was super close. For me, it wasn't super close, so it was a long way from home to school. Also, it was great because it was early in the morning. Sometimes I would just fall asleep in the bus going to school, and I would wake up in like after casually 50 minutes after some of the friends would join the bus on the way to school. So it was also a great napping opportunity for those of you who live far away. Just take advantage of the situation. Take a nap. Everybody needs a nap in the morning. But going to Mark Twain and having the opportunity to explore sports and also explore creative optional courses. I think we were in the same choir, we were in the same drama class, we were in the same percussion club. What am I missing?
Well, we did dance.
Sports dances? Yeah.
I think we did. Was it ceramic modeling at some point?
Actually, I didn't, and I've always felt bad for
Good.
not doing that because I remember I probably had something that was way more tempting to me. Although you guys did that course with Camelia, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it was good. It was pretty niche, but good fun and very sort of tactile, I guess, which is always cool when you
yeah.
can get your hands dirty in mud, essentially. But yeah, it was good. I think that was always a big struggle, the fact that you sort of were limited by the
5
days of the
days.
week and couldn't just go crazy and sort of switch more classes every couple of weeks. But yeah, it's consistency is good too.
I think it's there. People should feel successful. Everybody from the leadership of the school should be successful. When kids, we were kids during those years, feel bad that the week has only 5 days for school because you're frustrated that you wanted to do more. And there were sadly only 5 days. So I was like, God damn it, why can't I go to school on weekends too? I know it sounds crazy, but trust me, I personally enjoyed it so much that I was ready to literally go on a Saturday for that course that I really wanted to attend, such as pottery that I never got to do.
Yeah. No, I feel
Um,
you. I mean, we had, I guess, all kinds of other things, which other schools aren't sort of, I suppose, fortunate enough to offer these things. But we had like the big drama festival and our sort of biannual celebrations and things where you put on shows and dance and sing and have plays and whatnot. So yeah,
And
it's pretty
and
special.
and what's fascinating for me is the fact that the Mark Twain International Theater Festival got to be a real thing when our school realized that the drama club is something that we're actually good at, and they wanted to invest in that part of our school. So for those of you that are watching now, and I'm talking about the students, if there's something you really want to do, it's literally you have to do it and you have to show that you really want to do it. I think that's what inspired the school to actually start the first edition of the Mark Twain International Schools Theater Festival for teenagers. And it's not always about expecting or waiting for others to do things for you. It's you have to show, you have to be that example that inspires others to want to do something for you. So don't just wait for others to start that fire. You have to be that spark that inspires others to do things. Yeah, I felt like we should really mention, because I feel like, I don't know. I just wonder, like, if it was ever, is everyone going through the same experience that we went through? And I know a lot of courses are the same, a lot of optionals are the same. It's just you kids that have to push for more. So go there and show that you're super passionate about the things that you're doing. That was like a advice that you didn't ask for, but we're really happy to be here and offer them for free.
It's a good
So,
good pep talk.
yeah, thank you. Okay, so now going into more of the professional side. Obviously, I'm curious to know what you're doing, but the way that I want to formulate this question is, how would you describe one day of Alexa's professional life? And you're free to tell us all the details you want to share about your professional life.
I like that question. It's definitely more original than tell me about your job. Um, yeah, so a day in my professional life, pretty hectic. It involves meeting a ton of people, loads of different people every day. It's it can be quite challenging because I suppose the key element of my job are the people,
Mhm.
on the client side, on the candidate side, and I'll move on to explaining more about that in just a second. But we don't, we don't have a physical product. We don't do, subscription-based research. None of that. So the thing that you need to become really good at is just managing relationships with people, managing potential conflicts sometimes, understanding people's drivers, what sort of motivates someone. And I guess because we work across such a broad spectrum of industries and with people from all different levels, from graduates up to professionals with over 20, 25 years of experience, you need to just get used to asking people more about what they do and really kind of getting in the depth of it and coming away from those conversations with a proper understanding of what someone does in a job that you previously hadn't heard of before the interview.
Mhm.
So I'd say that is a good way to encapsulate it. But obviously, I'm happy to kind of go in more detail wherever you want me to.
Uh, Tell me about more about, for example, Fresh Minds,
Mhm.
because I feel like I did you did mention briefly what you do, but I think that, for example, someone like me, maybe I got what you were saying, but I would like to know more for like people who, because you did mention that your position is a senior client consultant. Like, what can you give us
What
more
you actually
detail?
do? What is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like what do
So
you do?
yeah, sure. So it's basically recruitment in the UK is sort
Okay.
of the name for it. In other places, like if you were in the States, it was probably more often known as headhunting, which I think is unnecessarily aggressive. Um, and I'm never
Yeah.
really comfortable at saying that that's what I do. But basically, I help people to find jobs in a super, super oversimplified way. Um, and Fresh Minds is a very sort of specialized boutique recruitment agency. So we only work with management consulting, strategy consulting firms. We work with a bunch of boutique investment banks and M&A advisory firms. We also do quite a lot of work with startups and scale-ups, which can be quite cool because they're in tons of different industries, and it's obviously where loads of innovation is taking place at the moment. And we sort of work from super junior roles, so fresh graduates, just left university, not really sure what I want to do, but I need my first job, all the way up to placing very experienced professionals into different types of positions. And our business is sort of split between permanent and project-based recruitment. And I think in Romania, it's probably a not super developed market at the moment, but in the UK and generally Western Europe, the gig economy is a really big thing, whereby you can literally leave university. If you're not sure what job you want to do for the long term, you can just do projects which vary in length. They can give you a really versatile skill set. It's obviously fully professional work experience, it's fully paid, but your CV in 5 years' time after you've left university is a bit different compared to someone that's just sort of stayed in the same job for many, many years. It's a little bit more versatile, I guess, and I think you'll be a lot more adaptable if you've had that type of experience. But I guess it's an interesting way to just sort of observe how things might evolve over the next few years here as well, where it's probably not going to be the norm in 5-6 years for people to just sort of graduate, get a job, stay in that job, you're kind of done. I think it's going to be a bit more varied, which is going to be interesting to see. Does that help to clarify?
Yeah. I mean, because first of all, like I was looking at my like basic starting point information that I know that I wrote about you, and I was trying to connect the dots between the Faculty of Law and what you're doing now. And now that you gave me that insight, it makes more sense, because I was trying to understand, like, hey, how did, like, it's somehow a recruiting system. And I was trying to understand how you managed to get from the law side of the spectrum to the recruiting side, but then it made more sense. But yeah. I get it now. So thank you for the information. So technically speaking, you help people find their, like, if I overly simplify it, you match them with a dream job they might, or maybe a dream job they never thought of. So
yeah. It is like a matchmaking system in a sense, and I think that is the most fun part of the job, that you might be able to show someone an opportunity that it just would never cross their mind that they can do that in the first place, or they just wouldn't have thought that you know they can get the experience that they want in that place. So yeah, it's like professional matchmaking.
Actually, sometimes I describe myself as a visual fortune teller. So I think I could easily say that you're a job fortune teller, and you foreshadow things that maybe they weren't expecting. So for those of you who are watching, now you know what Alexa does. And if you move to London, you know there's someone that can help you find your dream job.
Yeah, so
dear Fresh Minds, prepare yourself for people from Romania wanting to join to find the perfect job with your help.
I have to say, I do love it when people from sort of childhood or university or whenever reach out, because it just sort of feels like they value the way in which you could potentially help them. And I mean, look, these sorts of things, there are so many factors involved that it's not as simple as call me up, I will find you a job.
Obviously, it's a job.
It's a bit more complex than that. But I think one super useful thing that people can get out of it is, because the recruitment market isn't super well developed here at home, I think, first of all, people aren't aware that they can actually call someone up whose job it is to match people with other roles, and they can get advice, and they can sort of talk through a few potential ideas, and just bounce ideas off of someone who literally looks at tens of jobs each week and has a very broad understanding of lots of different markets. But I mean, I guess to just briefly address your earlier point, there isn't really a connection between, I guess, IB, law, and now this. I'm conscious it all looks a bit disjointed on paper. But I suppose the only connection is in all of those things, you get to practice communication, you build loads of different relationships, and you have to think very analytically about everything that you come across. So that's the only theme.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very much the type of job that people kind of fall into, because you can't exactly go to university to study this stuff. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not vocational necessarily. So yeah, I'm conscious that on paper it doesn't, it looks like sort of going up a hill and then through the woods and then crossing a river and then back through the woods.
I mean,
But
it's part of the experience, to be
yeah,
honest. But also, I mean, to me, it makes sense because obviously I imagine in law school you learn about structures and social structures and laws because it's law school, shocker. And obviously I feel like once you have that legal side of the reality well grounded inside of you, and how society works on paper, because I feel like bureaucracy and paperwork is something that a lot of people feel really confused about, and I'm one of those people. So I feel once you understand how the system works, obviously you can understand how the system works with the people in the system, and you're technically finding the people, the right people for the right parts of the system. So to me it makes sense.
nice, awesome. Well, I'm glad it does, because I think that means sometimes I need to explain it to my relatives many years down the line, and it still hasn't fully
Why
clicked.
aren't you a lawyer, Alexa? Because I thought you were.
It's interesting because I suppose here there is that expectation that what you study in university needs to reflect in your career choice afterwards, whereas I haven't really found that to be the case. In London so far, I feel like there's a bit more of a, the fact that you can study something just because you really enjoy it and you want to spend 3 years getting better at it, and just having a good university experience because you've studied something that you were genuinely passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have to be 100% connected to what you do afterwards, unless obviously you're in a field like medicine or not even finance, to be totally honest with you. I think even there the options of what you can do after are super broad. But yeah, a lot of my family is still mystified that I haven't gone into gone down the legal path, but such is life.
I mean, whatever makes you happy, Alexa. And know that it's funny. I said whatever makes you happy, and then we talked about pets and how you tailored your professional career road and so on and so forth. I mean, my next question, or at least that's how I feel, would naturally be what makes Alexa happy when she's not a professional working in her environment. And yeah, I couldn't just have missed this question. So please feel free to just let us know what makes you happy besides matching people with the perfect job.
Yeah, so obviously the past year has been, I think, mostly focused on just coping for everyone. So I guess the stuff that I'd normally say makes me happy, I haven't really had a chance to do to a great extent. But there are a few constants, I guess, beyond sort of trying out new things, traveling, seeing new places, and whatever else. Um, my family makes me very happy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a gift in a sense that I've been able to actually be here for so long this year and actually just be around them, which I guess is one silver lining of the mess that we're all in. And I'm conscious that it's not the same for everybody, but I feel super lucky to have that. And then art continues to make me happy, but I do it in a very different way than I guess you were sort of alluding to at the beginning of this chat, that I might have maybe done it professionally one day, but I think for me it's something that I prefer to keep not hidden, but I prefer for it to just sort of be mine. I think if I were to do it professionally,
Mm-hmm.
it would sort of I would lose ownership over it, and I would feel stressed, and I'd start to associate it with something commercial, and I use it more as a safe space. It's like my little bubble when I get the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I would find it very hard to dissociate from that. So I still do it a lot, but I just don't think that now is the time to do it as anything more than just a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think those are kind of the two big things, and just the constants throughout the years. Everything else kind of comes and goes, but family and art, those are the big
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah. I mean, I, I I I feel like I keep on saying I totally get you, but that's literally I totally get you, because as an Armenian, we're very, 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 like very, very family oriented, and family has like it's a huge component of our existence. And I feel like, especially during these times when we didn't get to see, I mean, obviously I have family back home in Armenia, and it's because of the pandemic, visiting them was really hard. And I mean, it's something that you start missing, obviously, like everything in life, once you don't have access to it. And I feel that we started looking back to our roots and wanting to reconnect once we understood that the world is in a really chaotic place. And I think us as humans, we often do that once we feel like the things around us, when they get more chaotic, we tend to go back to the things that keep us grounded. And I feel like our families have always done that. And I totally understand your point of view from the artistic side of the spectrum. And and I understand that stressful part you mentioned about putting yourself out there creatively and getting that exposure. It's really interesting, because I feel like I can relate to that, because the moment that you put yourself out there, by default you create a standard to which you have to constantly live up to. And you mentioned about making things more commercial. I understand that too, because I feel like there is a lot of pressure that's being put on artists, for example, especially in these hard times, for you to constantly create new things. And sometimes people don't understand that, compared to, for example, an exact work field, which is something like calculated. Uh, the artistic side of the work environment is totally related to your soul. And it's something that you have to feel on the inside to be able to express on the outside through your art form. So I totally understand that constant pressure of putting yourself out there, because a lot of times people don't understand that it's also a part of your soul that you expose. It's not just something you don't just draw, you feel something that makes you draw something. So and
Yeah, it's super personal. It's super. It's quite intimate, and
yeah,
I guess don't only expose yourself to criticism, but which is fine, because I suppose you
thick
can have
skin.
99 people that think is perfect, and then there will still be the one that is dissatisfied. So that part is fine. But I suppose yeah, you're right into sort of saying that there's just so much pressure now, and I think it's burnout is a thing. And I guess having days where you just not feeling it, you just
Yeah.
don't want to, it's just not coming out, and you don't want to disappoint anyone around you either. But equally, you need to kind of stay true to yourself and not produce something that you feel is below your standards, not anybody else's.
Hmm.
So I guess that's sort of, I'm personally not ready deep down to
Yeah.
tackle that monster. I think it'll be a few more years. But yeah, it's good to talk to someone who understands it.
Yeah,
I
I
can
totally do.
relate. on a lot of points, which is good.
And it's really funny that I keep on remembering that I was during my, I think last year of IB, it was 12th grade, and I was ready to submit some of my theater tasks and creative works that I had to submit for my final exams. And I remember I had to work on a set, and some of the elements that I had to draw for that set, for that play, for that course, were some vintage Baroque period furniture. And I remember I was in one of the classrooms, and I remember asking help from you, and you actually got to draw to a couch and an armchair for that exact set. And it was so, because I mean I was good at some parts of it, but then there were things, you were really amazing at a lot of things when it came to art. And I remember how easy, like it took you a few seconds and you were so calm, and you were, I was like, how did she do that? Like, does anyone have this on camera? Did she just do that in 5 seconds? So I constantly remember, and I think I don't even know how many, it's been 10 years, 10 or no, it's also
Uh,
11
yeah.
years. Now I feel old. Yeah, 11 years
Don't
ago.
go there. Don't go
11
to
years
the
ago, you helped me with that, and I'm really thankful. I'm bringing it up again now. So thank you, Alexa, for those two sketches that took place 11 years ago.
You're so welcome because I remember that. And I think the reason why I was so calm is because I had no clue what I was doing. But I'm glad it didn't show at the time. And it's also a relief to say this 11 years later and not have the time.
I mean, it's great. Well, we were almost done with IB, and yes, as you were saying, you had no clue what's gonna happen. So yeah, thank you again. And yeah, I thought you
Awesome.
wanted to add something. Yeah, sorry. My personal final question is more of a final message, but if there's anything you want to add, you want to mention, you want to ask, you're more than free to do so. uh so yeah, I will ask my last question that I have prepared for you, and if there's anything you wanna ask, mention, or put out there for our followers, you're more than welcome to do so. And my personal last question would be, what's your advice for our new generations that are going to graduate Mark Twain International School, or that are thinking of joining Mark Twain, and so on?
Okay. That's deep. I think, to be totally honest with you, the main piece of advice that I give anyone at that stage is just to make sure that the only pressure that you put on yourself is just pushing you in the direction of figuring out who you actually are as a person
Mm-hmm.
and what motivates you the most. I think there will be loads of other factors that you need to take into account, like what your parents want for you, what your friends think you should be doing, what your peers are doing, what is the big trend at the time, or I don't know, just other types of societal
Mm-hmm.
pressure that you're going to be dealing with. But I think what I guess the thing that I sort of cling to most days is my job might change in a couple weeks, couple months, couple years. I might not be doing this thing forever. I might not be living in the same place forever. I'm probably not going to have the exact same interests forever. But I just sort of want to make sure that no matter what it is that I do, it gets me to a point where I become more accepting of myself and I am in a position where I can just back myself to try new
Mm-hmm.
things. So I guess just making sure that your main goal is just everything that I do needs to get me one step closer to figuring out what really matters to me, I suppose, which I realize is kind of immaterial, but I don't think the rest of the stuff matters as much. And I don't want to be giving advice like, you should study these subjects because they will lead you to a flourishing career. And you should be doing these extracurriculars. No, I think that advice is um, not great because it just fluctuates too much and it depends on people's personal interests. So just make sure that you are accepting of yourself
Mm-hmm.
and you're confident and you have that trust that it is going to be okay, because it is going to be okay, believe it or not. I mean, we went through the IB, we're here in pieces, albeit, but we're fine. Sort of.
Yeah. The,
And other sort of life challenges, I guess. So if you sort of have that self belief, I guess, and humility as well, because there's obviously a lot more that you can learn, and many areas in which you can continue to develop. So the advice isn't be arrogant and sort of believe that
be
you are
humble.
in. Yeah, it's not sort of believe that you're indestructible, but just focus on figuring out what matters to you and who you want to be, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that
I mean,
sort of
I mean, it makes a lot of sense because obviously I feel like there's a lot of pressure from families, friends, and the society and everyone's expectations towards what we're supposed to gravitate towards when we're choosing a career. And I feel like a lot of kids are sometimes confused and easily influenced by other people's opinions. And I mean, look where we got now with the whole pandemic situation. I mean, I feel like a lot of super job opportunities that would have been amazing for a lot of people in 2019 got to be deconstructed as job careers and paths because the reality we live in changes constantly and we never know what the future has prepared for us. So I feel like, as you mentioned, the moment that you realize that you have to make yourself happy, that's the point where you can literally always get to a point where you can sustain yourself financially too, as long as you are happy with what you're doing. So find that one thing that makes you happy and just go with it. So
yeah. And
I
but just to briefly add to that, I think just because you're good at something at one point in time doesn't mean that
mhm,
you're obligated to continue doing that
yeah,
for a job, or you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it anymore. And I think as soon as you show other people that you're good at something, there is
mhm,
that added pressure and you feel like you're kind of letting them down if you're maybe not going in that direction. But just ignore that, just lock it all away and do what makes you happy, and you're going to be so much better off many years later.
yeah. I mean, I totally get what you just said, and I think I constantly. I mean, for me as a Mark Twainer, it was really hard to sometimes, as you were just saying, I got to know people that I still remember. I still talk to them. We're great, super close friends, and sometimes we all have expectations of our friends of what they're supposed to do from our point of view, but we never get to know the one, like the pure essence that each of us keeps on the inside. So whatever your friend's doing, just be there and be supportive. Don't put your own pressure, because I feel like every one of us puts pressure on themselves by default. So as much as you can be supportive, just be that supportive friend. Don't be that friend that puts pressure on.
Yeah, just be kind.
Yeah, yeah,
Goes a long way. Yeah.
yeah. So pretty much that's all I had prepared for you today. And I am so happy that we got to do this call. And I'm so grateful that you managed to find time to join. And it was really refreshing because there are a lot of people that I mean, obviously there are people with whom you get to have a connection throughout your life, and once you get to see them again, you feel like nothing has changed. It's the same person, it's the same relationship. But once in a while you get to meet, just as I got to have this conversation. I don't even remember when's the last time we got to see each other.
5 6 years ago, I think, if not longer.
Yeah, I think it was at Mark Twain, like again at
Mm,
Mark Twain. I,
it was I haven't seen you since I started working, and that was 5 years ago. So
yeah, so it's technically 6 or even 7 years, which is a lot. But I'm so grateful that we got to have the Zoom call and you got to share your experience with our followers at Alumni Spotlight, our fun and chill Q&A session, which is the fourth one that we got to do. And technically, we started this show thinking that we would start with 4 editions, and hopefully we will have more. And yeah, I'm really happy that I got to do this call with you, and it was really really inspiring and refreshing. And I'm really happy that you're doing what makes you happy, and I hope you keep up with this inspiring spirit, and I hope you get to help people that feel kind of lost and get them the dream job that maybe they never thought of. So thank you on behalf of those people, Alexa.
well, thank you. And yeah, it's always really sort of, it feels like coming home, I guess, to have these conversations, leaving aside all the cliches and everything, but it really really does. And yeah, you're right, you haven't changed. From my perspective, you're exactly the same as you were in school. I think you've got the same energy, same sort of bubbliness, same openness, and that's really awesome. And I think for stuff like this, if someone's gone to Mark Twain and they feel similar to how we feel, I think this is stuff that you need to sort of make time for. And I know I will always make time for these things because they just have a really special place somewhere for me. And yeah, I think you need to keep that in its own sort of bubble. You need to protect it. I think even
Yeah,
if you're not seeing people face to face every day, but it's special, so you need to look after it.
I'm so happy. And I'm really happy that our followers got to hear you talk about your experience at Mark Twain and then at King's College and now in your professional life. And I think if there's anything you want to add before we say goodbye to our followers, you're free to do so. If not, we can just join together in saying goodbye, whichever way works for you.
Yeah, I think this has been great. And I think the main thing that I'd add is just what I was saying earlier about us kind of keeping these connections over the years, because they really do matter and it makes such a difference to have this kind of constant
Mhm.
in your life. And as I said earlier, you're great. You've always been so kind and just a really warm presence and warm person to speak to. So I'm super flattered to have had this conversation with you. And yeah, maybe we can rehash the whole series face to face in a couple
Yeah,
months time, wherever, whenever we have our freedom back.
yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, this has been
It
great.
was our pleasure. Yeah, it was really our pleasure to have you. And thank you again. And definitely, I think everybody watching these series will want to join for a huge group reunion after this whole pandemic situation calms down a little bit more. And I guess we should just wish everyone a wonderful evening, and we hope that your week will be super chill and fruitful and filled with people that are there to support you and show you kindness. So we're sending hugs to everyone watching. Thank you for joining for our first episode of Alumni Spotlight, hosted by Mark Twain International School. And take care. Bye bye,
Bye, guys.
everyone. Bye.